Hello from Dubai for a special edition of Al Arabiya English, reporting from right by the Dubai Marina, which is behind me, and the Palm, which is also to my left-hand side. I've got Dr. Elie Al Hindy here with me to speak to me today regarding what the evening and the morning has been like right here in Dubai in the Middle East. As we sit here, Dr. Elie, we can still hear those fighter jets going overhead. There were multiple blasts this morning which were heard across Dubai, and a lot of the UAE has been experiencing exactly the same thing. What is the situation right now, right here in Dubai? And we're also hearing that across the UAE, there's also been multiple blasts.
True. Well, definitely this is something that the UAE has never witnessed before. The people living in the UAE have never witnessed that before. It's been a long night since yesterday noonish. It's been non-stop. Somehow we can hear the noises, we can see some explosions in the sky, and even the things that everybody saw with explosions happening or things falling in different places in Dubai. This definitely have put the people in some way unease situation, but in general we can say that the situation is still controlled to a large extent. Definitely we have to see where the whole thing is happening, because this is not incidents on its own. It's part of the whole thing that's happening in the region. All security measures, all security operations have been on way. Everything has been controlled very quickly and very efficiently. Definitely the airport and the Jebel Ali port are still out of functioning now, but we will see how this develops from there.
And obviously Dubai is facing missiles coming in from Iran at the moment. We just spoke about Jebel Ali. On the way here, you can still see smoke rising from that area within Dubai. Why Jebel Ali? It's a big port area. Why is that significant?
It's definitely many questions to be asked there. Hitting the American, military bases in the Gulf region is one thing, and hitting infrastructure in what I might say maybe not allies, but friendly regimes and friendly countries that have been so far for the past year trying to decrease the tension, trying to push for negotiation, for a peaceful resolution of the conflict. To hit these countries in their infrastructure, in their civilian infrastructure, is something that really crosses red lines by the Iranian regime. Now, this could be probably understood that it is a reaction to the death of the supreme leader, the Ali Khamenei, in a sense. But again, you're cutting, you're destroying your bridges. You're cutting down the relationship with the regimes that are potentially your environment, that could potentially play a role in future negotiations.
And we're talking about the UAE right now. We're here in Dubai. We heard blasts all night. I saw interceptions right over my house this morning. We mentioned those fighter jets. Yeah. We also know that these are hitting Qatar, Bahrain. We've also heard Kuwait reports about Oman. Do you think that we could see a coordinated GCC attack against Iran, a retaliation possibly?
Well, definitely. I think so far they've been on the defense. But if things go on like this, I don't think they can simply restrict themselves to just defense. Gulf countries have been hit significantly, and they need to send a clear message that they will not take this on. What shape will this take? I don't know. I hope it will be a GCC coordinated reaction. Also we have to keep in mind that they wouldn't want to engage in a full war, because it's again against their interest, against what they stand for. They also wouldn't want to be seen as allies of Israel in this attack on Iran, but they definitely need to do something. Let's see what that would be.
And let's talk about the US attack, because we woke up yesterday to reports that the US had launched this attack. And Dr. Elie, you and I for weeks have been talking about when this attack is going to come and what options the US has in Iran. Sure. Will it attack the military sites? Will it go for Tehran? Will it go for the top leaders? And we've seen that they've gone for Ayatollah Khamenei. There is confirmation that he's lost his life. Sure. What is happening right now in Tehran?
Well, I think the US has been hesitant since last June and maybe even before on which course of action to take. I think they were well aware, or at least the administration was well aware, that a military operation is not necessarily clear on the results that would come out of it. And it's not necessary, even now, when you've killed the head of the regime, that the regime is going to fall. So things are really open to so many different options. And this is, I think, what the US was hesitant to engage in. The different options could include a more aggressive regime, a more better or stronger crackdown on internal opposition. The Ayatollah could be replaced with someone who is even more radical. All of this is yet to be seen. Definitely Trump seemed to be sure of how things will happen in Iran. I'm not sure how he can. They do have, it seems, some very strong intel from inside Iran, and this is what made them reassure very quickly that the Ayatollah has been killed. But then is this enough to assert that Trump says, I know who's going to rule Iran, I have a very clear picture? I'm not sure how certain he can be. Different options in Iran could be open to so many different things. On the other hand, the military, practical military operations, I think the Iranians have in place such a good system of replacing the leaders, any leader that has been killed. We hear about even 4 degrees of replacement that are in place. So it will not directly affect their ability to retaliate, and we've seen that in the past 24 hours. But how consistent this can be, this is yet to be seen. We're seeing a bit of maybe less of an aggressive attack on Israel than we've seen in June last year, but more on the Gulf region. This could have been interpreted militarily as the fact of them not having as much long-range missiles, especially the precise ones, and having much more short-range missiles that they are using to the maximum possible.
And we're talking about Iran right now, and we talk about the leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, going. We talk about a change of government, and like you said, they've probably actually been preparing for this behind the scenes, because the US has made it pretty clear that if they don't make an agreement on nuclear or come to the table, that there is going to be these attacks. And we've seen that huge US military fleet build up in the region. But my question right now is, what does this mean for the future of Tehran and the future for the Middle East? Because I think a lot of us are feeling uncertain, and I think this is where the problem is coming on. No one really knows what the day after is, and the US has said it's going to go full force into Iran. They seem to have just literally gone for broke, many people are saying.
I do believe that the death of the supreme leader is not necessarily a direct fall of the regime. This is far from it. The different options that could happen, we have so many different things that could potentially happen. There could be, as we said, a new leader that is more radical. There could be divisions between the Revolutionary Guard and other people in the regime. There could be more people taking to the streets and trying to overthrow the regime in this opportunity that they see. So all of these are potential options, and definitely the potential for instability in Iran is a real potential, and is what Gulf countries were really afraid of and prefer not to have at their doorstep in that sense. Now, some signs that came from Iran with the fact that the transitional period is not led by the favorite people of Khamenei, but rather by the president, by the head of the judiciary, and by one of the Supreme Council, which is what the constitution says, but then it deviates from the wishes of Khamenei. This could be a potential sign that his people or his close circle is no longer in control, and there could be a potential more moderate position that the regime could take. But this is yet to be seen. What's going to happen with the negotiations, how much control they have on the military operations, but also on the streets in Iran. All this will make a huge difference.
And let's talk about the negotiations, because of course last week you and I were discussing those indirect talks happening in Geneva. We saw Jared Kushner, we saw Steve Witkoff in Geneva. Oman was of course mediating, Iran was also there. We heard positive music actually out of Abbas Araghchi, who is of course the Iranian foreign minister, after those talks, and we're meant to have technical talks in Vienna tomorrow. Do you think those technical talks will happen? And what do you think was the fact that they're in the middle of talks which appeared positive and then went sour so quickly?
Well, there's different theories on whether the whole negotiation was a show by Trump just to deviate from the preparations. I don't think it is. I think Trump was really keen on reaching an agreement. but also, as we've said so many times on your show, that the regime by definition is ideological, is very sustained on what they want and how they see their contribution to the region. And what Trump was asking was simply impossible for the regime to take or to accept. For them, it would have been a complete surrender, especially when you include not only the nuclear, which potentially is nuanced and could potentially be discussed with the IAEA in Vienna or other things, but when Trump puts in the ballistic missiles, that we are seeing the effect of the ballistic missiles, and the militias that could also potentially be engaged now, these are where the real threats, and Trump wouldn't have accepted a deal without these, and these were completely off the table for the Iranian regime so far.
Let's talk about the proxies in the region, because we know there's Hezbollah. We know that people are concerned there could be an uprising of the various proxies dotted around the Middle East. Is that a major concern?
Definitely, it's a major concern, and definitely we've seen some movement. However, so far it's been much less than expected. To be fair, Israel was preparing and was ready for a direct engagement by Hezbollah on its northern border. This so far has not happened so far. Maybe because Hezbollah has been weakened, maybe because the position of the Lebanese government have been so strong, maybe the Lebanese opposition of the people against such an engagement. All of these are factors, but still we could see Hezbollah, because again it is ideologically connected to that regime, could launch into something. Israel is preparing for that potential. In Iraq, we've seen a hit on the popular movement, and we've seen a reaction against the US embassy and US bases. But again, much less than potentially expected. The Houthis has been out of the picture so far. So all of it, these frontline potentials for Iran that it built in order to preserve itself and protect itself have been weakened so much, to the extent that now Iran is taking the hit directly on its own land and its own territory, its own regime, and these proxies have not been able to actually run to the rescue.
And we talk about intervention in the Middle East. Donald Trump probably taking the biggest gamble of his political career, many people are saying, by going in with this massive strike on Iran. It continues. We saw plumes above Tehran. We've said this before. Supreme leader is now dead. What is the US histories like when it comes to Middle East conflicts? Because it's been controversial.
Definitely,
and history,
to say the least.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And history is going to write Donald Trump's story for him. And we look back on major presidents like George Bush, and things haven't really gone America's way.
Exactly. I think you're very right to mention George Bush Jr. Since that time, since the big failure in Iraq, like 2005, 2006, it became very clear for all American politicians, but also people, that we need to disengage from this region. And every president since have said, I want to disengage from the Middle East, I don't want to be involved. Yet they have failed to do so, because this region is so strategic in terms of economy, in terms of military, in terms of the connection with Israel, in terms of the growing Gulf role. All of these factors made the Gulf so essential to American foreign policy and to world security altogether. So disengagement has proved to be very elusive. And Trump, we have to remember that his campaign was based on, we will not engage in new wars, and we will not tell the people of the region when to change a regime and when not. This is something for the people of the region. He said it here in Saudi Arabia very clearly, that he does not want to get involved in this. Now it's a different track. The simple answer is, or maybe the too simple answer is, that Israel has convinced him and has dragged him once more into their political agenda. But the more nuanced answer is that, again, going back to this regime, this very ideological regime, its impact on the past 40 years of the region has been quite negative. And I don't see that the potential of that regime changing behavior and changing course is possible at all. I think this was doomed to happen sooner or later. Definitely Trump took it upon himself, and he will, of course, as usual, try to declare victory and the best victory in the history of the world and so on. But again, I think the repercussions of what's happening today will be heard in the Middle East for several months to come, if maybe not years.
Because I think we saw that attack back in June when the US and Israel did Midnight Hammer.
Sure.
That seemed to be massive strikes, and they left pretty quickly. It seemed to be one and done, when now I think people are preparing for this to be a longer period of fighting and a longer period for the US to be involved in the Middle East.
I guess the hope was in June that if we attack and destroy the nuclear program, then Iran will be ready to discuss the other files, which proved to be not true. They hoped that a very strong tactical attack would bring the regime to the negotiation table in a more flexible way, which did not happen. So I think it came to the conviction that we need a much stronger, much more prolonged attack on Iran to actually force that regime to come to terms with what is offered. How long? This is very unclear. How damaging is this attack on the abilities of the regime to survive is also very unclear. Definitely, Trump can brag about the fact that he has cut all the bad influence of Iran in the region, but yet he is yet to be able to brag that he has made the complete shift into a new region that he have been calling for a while.
And we talk a lot about Israel and Israel's involvement in this. How persuasive do you think they've been when it comes to Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump appeared to want to attack Iran a little bit earlier on. We spoke about that. The mood music's been there, but he's held back.
Well, for Israel, I think it's a completely different ballgame altogether. We're wrong to assume that the Israeli and American interests are always aligned. They are not. But we also need to understand that the Israeli mentality, government, military, and people is completely different after 7 October. They are willing to fight the war to the end. They are willing, as Netanyahu called it, the war to end all wars. They see this as a life or death situation. They are willing to pay the price of attacks in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, in Jerusalem, on civilian and military targets, which has never been the case before. So I think they are fully on in this war. They are betting that this will be the war that will ensure the destruction of the Iranian regime, and they are pushing Trump and all the situation towards that situation. The only way out of that would have been if the Iranian regime proved them wrong and said, no, I am willing to compromise, I am willing to become a positive player in this region, but unfortunately this is a missed opportunity.
And Dr. Elie, we're just going to wrap up by talking about the fact that we're in Dubai, we can still hear fighter jets, there's been interception. I know it's a bit of an open-ended question, but is there any expectation on how long this could last or what we're facing at the moment?
Definitely, due to all the factors that we've mentioned, it's very difficult to predict. Assumptions are at least several days to come. It could potentially be much longer. But those who militarily analyze the capabilities of Iran assume that they don't have the ability to go for a very long period of time. If it was only Israel-Iran, then I would be sure that it's going to be finished with few days. But since the US troops have all been engaged, fully fledged engagement in this war, I think Trump will not stop until he sees the results he wants in Iran. So it could take a while, unfortunately.
And let's just give people a sense right now, because you and I are in Dubai, we work together a lot, and I'm just looking over the balcony towards the Palm. We've also got the marina here, and there's one thing that is amazing is it's just eerily quiet.
Yeah.
And it seems that so many people have taken those orders to shelter in place. They've listened to those emergency alerts on the mobile phones to say take care, be careful. There definitely feels like there's a fear here at the moment.
Definitely caution, if not to say fear. Definitely people are aware of the danger and they are following the instructions of the government, which is again something always to be advised and reasserted. But in general, I think we can still see traffic in the roads. The tram is still working, but I wouldn't say it's normal life, of course, but it's a contained situation. We advise people, of course, to continue to be cautious, not to take any unnecessary risks, and hopefully this will pass very soon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elie.
A pleasure.
And appreciate your time. Thank you.